And that is our Coca-Cola move of the race. Fantastic for a Coca-Cola racing family member, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And a special shout out to Wendy's for making sure that I was not hungry through the entirety of the Daytona 500. And not only that, they gave us the special privilege, because of the Wendy's burger on board of the day, of missing Ryan Blaney losing a tire and Alex Bowman moments from disaster saving a car. We never got a replay of that, but at least we got the Wendy's on board. It was fantastic, so thanks to Wendy's for that. Special shout out as well to Busch Light, because I certainly wouldn't have been able to get through those couple of overtimes where we smashed up hundreds of thousands of dollars of race cars without the help of Busch Light. Head for the mountains of Busch. And did you know, if you text a number on the fourth lap of every fourth part of the race, but make sure you do it when we're not in commercial, otherwise you'll miss the lap that ends in 4, you can enter the Busch 401k sweepstakes, where if you text Busch's number and give up your personal information, possibly to be texted and harassed by Busch Beer with advertising for the rest of your human adult life, maybe you could win $50,000 for your retirement, thanks to Busch 401k. And those wrecks, I'll tell you what, those were spectacular, weren't they? Rather than give you an update on any of the drivers' conditions that were involved in them, we're going to give this wreck the Goodyear Skid Mark of the Race Award. Goodyear, driving winners since the birth of NASCAR. Did I tell you that NASCAR is 75 years old? Well, you know, you don't actually want to watch any more of our NASCAR racing product, but let's show you the same NASCAR 75 ad 75 times. So we'll advertise to you to watch more NASCAR, well, more NASCAR commercials. Now the rest of this video will be brought to you with limited commercial interruption by our partners at Toyota. And now, let's go Toyota all out. Okay, so let's be positive. Welcome to episode 4 of the David Land podcast. I tried to stall as long as I could. Kyle, I guess, is in a drive-through line somewhere in Florida, so here we are again. Okay, so I guess I'll start talking a little bit about last night's video, because it did go over well, and I appreciate all the positive feedback on it, because you know, sometimes when you like lampoon a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation like Fox, you worry a little bit, because a lot of people try to defend corporations a lot of times. So, you know, when you make fun of them for that long, or you try to make fun of them, you got to at least hit the mark, because if you miss, you know, it's kind of like that thing where, like, if you swing for the king's head, you better not miss. And I kind of felt like that's always the way I approach it with these multinational corporations when I criticize them. So I hope you enjoyed that. What's funny about that is some people actually really got the joke, because as you guys know, like, this is my job. So I have to, I do have to run ads. Like, I sympathize with Fox. Like, you have to run ads on a certain amount of content. I mean, even though Formula One doesn't run traditional ads on their broadcasts, they sell all sorts of sponsorships throughout that broadcasting process. So, like, the criticism of Fox is a little bit more nuanced than just they ran a certain number of commercials, or like Larry Mack was trying to defend Fox on the radio this morning, that, you know, it's not the number of ads that are run, or whether or not it was less than 2 years ago. That's irrelevant. It's how much the advertisements interrupt the flow of the broadcast. And that really interrupted the flow of the broadcast. But some of you actually got the full joke that I did, because as a YouTuber, I get to place where ads roll in the middle of videos. And I chose specifically the moment right after I said, we're going to go Toyota nonstop with limited commercial interruption, to place an ad to go right as I wrapped up the fake sponsor segment into something that was an actual ad that was actually running on my videos. So yes, that was intentional, if you were wondering, and that was the ultimate punchline. Is that it was all these sponsored segments, and then we get into the real ad break. So I'm glad some of you guys got that, and I hope you watched the whole ad, the ad all the way through. Oh hey, look who's here! There he is.
Yeah, look, Xander finally got his chicken.
Oh, let's see that chicken. Yeah, do you have the? Oh, that's just Xander's chicken. There's Xander. That's everybody from Car Chaser. Was the chicken worth it?
Was the chicken worth me being late?
Well, listen up, Dave. All right.
Hold on. No, we can hear him. Okay.
Hold on. I gotta give me a sec, man. All right. First of all, Dave, you should be thanking me. All right.
Okay.
I actually plugged this guy in so he can hear you through the headset today, which is why I can't hear you right now. See, last week I left Kyle on his own, and Kyle couldn't figure it out. And again, everyone, remember, we have been doing live streams for almost 2 years now. We're talking 50+ broadcasts, and he can't figure out how to plug in an audio cable. So, again, forget my chicken about making him late, all right? I have been a huge help. And also, like I said, being on the road with this guy for the last 2 years, I know not to expect Kyle to be on time.
No, you're right. That is a true fact. That's a true fact. That's a little inside baseball. Now everybody knows the secret, which is Kyle. Let's talk about waking him up. That's the real.
Let's talk about waking Kyle up. That's a very good thing. Hold on, I'm getting a phone call from somebody. Oh man. All right. So here's the thing, right? Go-kart races, some of the IndyCar races that aren't night races, you have to be at the track super early. We're talking be at the track 6:30, 7 a.m. Well, Kyle doesn't operate he doesn't know those hours of the day. So we don't have an alarm clock. We don't tell Kyle when we go. There is no alarm that works for Kyle. The alarm is a human alarm when Trevor or myself say, Kyle, get up. And normally we throw something at Kyle. And
I've employed jumping on the bed before.
Jumping on the bed. There may be some obscenities thrown in there that I'm going to keep it clean for this podcast. All respect to you, Dave, but for example, we're all getting on planes tomorrow, to fly home. Kyle does no idea when his flight is. He might know. He does not know when we're leaving for his flight. That's on me and Trevor. We just get him there, and the plane takes him the rest of the way. So you're welcome, Dave.
All right, so Kyle. Well, Kyle has been admonished by both of the people who employ him, so that's a good start.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you, Xander, and all that you do for racing. If you haven't, I'll give him a plug for that segment because that was absolutely fantastic. If you haven't checked out Car Chaser, what a great and needed thing in the world of karting. If you've ever seen a race car driver, really most of them in the Daytona 500 yesterday, they probably came through the ranks of karting. So if you want to see the guys who are probably going to be racing, the guys and gals actually who are going to be racing at the top level in the next couple of years, honestly, go over to Xander's great channel and see what he's doing over there because it's really cool stuff. I got to work a race with you guys at Newcastle Motorsports Park, and really it's a top class operation. It's amazing what they're able to do, and it really shows you the power of social media and what it can do for racing in the right hands. So we appreciate what you're doing, Xander.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it too, Dave. I'm looking forward to coming and hanging out with you boys in St. Pete in the week and a half. Should be fun.
Oh, that's gonna. Yeah, I'm excited for St. Pete. Trust me. And I'm certainly excited to tear up the road in those rental scooters for sure.
Oh God, I hope we don't have any more incidents this year. My shoulder can't afford another. I've never wrecked on one of those things before in my life, and St. Pete did it to me on my first try last year.
Oof. So yeah.
We're trying to make that batting average just 1 for 2 of going down.
They haven't made safer concrete yet. Maybe we can innovate that at St. Pete at some point. But good to talk to you, Xander. All right, give me my podcast host back.
All right, hey, ask nicely next time. All right, you probably my chick did a good job today.
Please.
Hey, get him.
No, the Colts have not paid for ad space on my hat. I have paid the Colts in blood, sweat, and tears, and they've rewarded me with a joke of a franchise right now. But all right, let's actually get into this podcast. As people are kind of streaming in here, I want to do at least one topic that's not related to the Daytona 500, because I feel like once we get into the Daytona 500, it's going to overtake this entire podcast.
That's pretty much this entire episode if we don't talk about anything else now.
Well, there's one thing that I wanted to bring up, and it's kind of a good thing to kind of segue as people come in expecting NASCAR, is that Tony Kanaan retired again in the middle of last week. And it made me think of a topic that I kind of want to discuss. What makes a race car driver popular? Because, I mean, Tony Kanaan has been around literally. I mean, my first Indy 500 was 2002. That was also Tony Kanaan's first Indy 500. But he'd been racing since 1998. Kyle, when were you born again?
2001.
Okay. So for a lot of people, potentially who are watching this stream right now, I would imagine, or listening on our podcasting platforms, a driver like Tony Kanaan has been around, had staying power for almost 30 years in the sport. And it makes me think, is it just the fact that he's been around for that long that he has become popular? And who is going to be a driver, especially in IndyCar, where there aren't as many super popular drivers who sell a lot of merchandise and everybody gets right behind them and just screams and yells when they take the lead? You know, who's the next Tony Kanaan, and how do they get to that Tony Kanaan level? I mean, what did Tony do differently than some of his contemporary drivers in his era, do you think?
That's a really good point. I would have never thought of that. Well, right now, I think it's Pato Award. It looks like it, at least, as far as fan base. Like, if you, like you said, who's buying the merchandise, and you know, who do you see visibly the most supported driver right now from the fan base? It looks like it's Pato. But what did Tony do different? I mean, obviously, everybody at IMS loves him, because obviously when you go to the race for so many years and you see a guy come close and be good at the speedway, lead laps, and then just constantly have something go wrong, that obviously, I think people grab onto that. Like, we see Dale Earnhardt taking 20 years to win the Daytona 500. But then on top of that, their personality, I think, is probably the biggest part. Like, Tony Kanaan, like, I mean, he's funny, he's nice, he's just genuine, just an all-around genuine guy that I think, you know, attracts people towards him anyways to be a fan of his. And then the adversity he faced at the speedway before he won the race, I think it just made people gravitate towards him, you know, and, you know, just the type of person he is, and the adversity he faced at Indy, I think, made people really want to just cheer for him.
Well, I think that's a great point. And it was one that I was going to bring up, is that I even said in my video where I kind of broke down 5 moments of his career that I really stood out to me, was 2010, was having those 2 crashes, trying to get in the field, struggling with a backup car. And he had a Now,
I noticed the point you made there.
You know where I'm going with this. You know where I'm.
Because guess what? The fans didn't like that.
Well, for those of you who don't know, there was a couple of years where Andretti Autosport really, really struggled at Indianapolis. And it was weird, too, because it really came out of nowhere. I mean, they had been so dominant early in kind of that IRO 5 era with Dan Weldon, and then Dario Franchitti and Tony Kanaan and all those drivers.
And then in 06, obviously, they were second, too. Like, they were.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they should have won that race. I mean, Michael and Marco were leading on laps 198 and 199. They just didn't lead lap 200. But they fell off really quickly. There was a couple of things that led to that. I think my opinion is that the team chemistry totally fell apart. I don't think Marco, Tony Kanaan, Hideki Muto, and Danica Patrick got along the same way that Brian Herta, Dan Weldon, Tony Kanaan, and Dario Franchitti did. But once that team started that downward spiral, especially at Indianapolis, we saw how the drivers who were at the top of their game only a couple of years before reacted to adversity. And the fan base really got behind Tony Kanaan because, like I said in that video, he took everything on the chin and was very classy about the defeats, got in the field, and then without complaining, drove all the way through the field, got to second, had a chance to win. I mean, he didn't have anything for Dario Franchitti that day, but he really showed some grit and determination that the Indianapolis 500 fans absolutely love. What the Indianapolis 500 fans do not like is when a driver is struggling to qualify for the field and throws their team under the bus. And that's exactly what Danica Patrick did. And I'm not hating on Danica, but this was one of the low points in her career, was she got on the public address system and said, "It's not my fault that we're going slow."
Yeah.
And I've heard boos. I mean, this was a Kyle Busch boo. And I mean, This was 2010. So there weren't that many people at whatever that was. It was either pole day or bump day. There weren't as many people that came to qualifying back then. And the boos ricocheted off of the grandstands there. So I think that was really one of the moments that the fans started to turn on Danica, to be honest with you. Yeah. And so that was almost a pivotal moment for like popularity's sake. So Tony, to me, the big thing that separated him from the other drivers, you mentioned personality, but you can have a great personality and be a terrible driver. You know what I mean? Like he had all of the things that you want. You have the adversity of a Michael Andretti. You have the personality of a Pato O'Ward or a Dan Weldon, a fun guy, an exciting guy, a guy that people can get behind. But you also have the grit and determination of an AJ Foyt. And that's why when I made that comparison, some people misinterpreted it. I'm not saying that Tony Kanaan was going to win a midget or a sprint car race. The reason that I compared Tony to AJ Foyt is because of that connection to the fans and the connection that the fans ride with Tony Kanaan. If you've ever been to an Indy 500 and Tony Kanaan comes to the front, everybody gets up and yells. It's unbelievable. It's electric. It's electric when he gets into the lead. And I guess Pato's probably the closest right now, where he's not only a driver who has a great personality, he doesn't complain too much. Obviously, he's not complaining as much as Danica did in 2010. And I think he's also beginning to get that kind of, and he's going to hate me for saying this, but he's beginning to get that reputation at Indianapolis where he's coming close, but he doesn't win. And as much as a driver hates that.
Not to mention he's missed the field too. I mean,
he got bumped. He got bumped the first time he tried to qualify for the 500.
He's missed the race. He's finished second. He's ran well a couple times now.
His rookie year, he finished fourth or fifth.
Yeah,
I can never remember
missing the field. The next year after missing the field, finished like top 5.
Yeah.
So
and he's been top 5 every year.
Yeah,
I
every
believe.
year with McLaren.
Yeah. So he that adversity is going to start endearing people to him, especially in Indianapolis, where the heart of the fan base is. But is it just time? Because I mean, there's a lot of drivers because I feel like there's people who love Marco too. Like Marco has a huge, or Graham. Graham's been around forever too. Maybe you're the wrong person to talk to about that, but is it just time?
Yeah. Time for what? Time for the change of the guard?
Well, no. Just like time. Does time create popularity?
How long they've been there? No, because it's been this way for how long? I would say it's time if he just became popular, but it's been electric for how many years now? Over 10 years, which is, I mean, how many years has he been in the sport now? It wasn't 2020 to the 20th year. So, I mean, his popularity has been how it is for over half the time span he's been in IndyCar, I would imagine, at least.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
At this point. So I don't think it's time. And I think it's just a lot of people base who they like off of how they're treated when they try to get autographs, man. And like, how many people do you still hear at IMS during the month of May talk about Danica in some bad way? And who's complaining about Tony Kanaan, not giving their kid an autograph or something? Nobody.
Not many. Not many. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I mean, the other question you brought up is like the changing of the guard. So like, okay, let's say Pato is most likely to succeed Tony.
Yes.
Who else has that electricity or capability to create electricity? And this just doesn't even go, I guess, for IndyCar. I guess we could segue this into NASCAR because there aren't many people, because like I was told from the folks who were actually at Daytona that the crowd was electric when Kyle Busch took the lead, but they were actually more electric when Kyle took the lead versus when Stenhouse actually won the race, which is kind of interesting to me. Again, it'd be hard without being there to know that for sure, but I trust, you know, my audience, they're going to tell me the truth on those sort of things. You know, who in this next generation, let's go IndyCar first, and then we'll segue to NASCAR. Who outside of Pato in the IndyCar has a chance to become that driver that just people are diehard for?
Oof. I mean, Pato is clear, like not like just fully ahead. Outside of him, Colton, maybe.
I think, I think the big problem, the thing that's going to hold Colton back in terms of like popularity, which he does not care about, first of all, that's the first thing.
That's the first part.
But the second thing is like, he doesn't want, like he loves IndyCar, but he's not tied to it yet.
Yeah.
He has ambitions elsewhere right now. And I think that's probably what are keeping fans from getting attached to him, because they think he's as good as gone as soon as he gets super license points, which is not untrue, by the way. I would say, in my estimation.
I mean,
so who else? I mean, because the one that I'm surprised hasn't like taken off, and I can never understand why, is Joseph.
Yeah. Okay. See, exactly. Your point just got proven there, because I wasn't even thinking about him.
Oof.
That's not good.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's getting there with Bus Bros, I would say. McLaughlin and Joseph, both of them. But that's the thing. It's nowhere near Kanan levels of fandom and, you know, popularity. Which is crazy.
For sure. Yeah.
I was thinking of Rossi as well. I mean, he needs to actually show his personality, because he has one, and it's great, and he's awesome. And
he was popular when he was dominant, though, too. When he was a consistent front runner, people, I felt like, cheered for him.
Didn't he win most popular driver like 2 years ago or a year ago?
2018, the year he was like championship contender. I'm pretty sure. Maybe
it was. No, it was later than that. It was when he won most popular driver in a year where he wasn't winning. People love. See, that's what I was talking. People love Rossi. Do you not remember they did like the end of year award show?
Yeah, they actually like streamed that for some reason.
And Hinch was hosting it, and he read out the most popular driver, and it was Rossi, and he just like acted stunned, and it was hilarious, because he's right. It's incredible that he was the most popular driver of, like, I think it was 2020, 2021.
I mean, I remember that Rossi's diecast, if you look on like eBay, like
every year they're gone.
They're gone, and they hold value. Like, people pay ridiculous prices, not just for the 2016 winner, mind you, like the 2018 car. Look up prices on the aftermarket for that car, and feel stupid that you didn't buy that for $60 when it was available. But yeah, I mean, there are, I guess there's like silent Rossi fans out there.
Remember the 100th running was sold out. How many IndyCar races was that people's first time, and Rossi wins?
Well, that was a trend I noticed
the next few years.
Yeah. No, he was a consistent front runner. And I noticed that with Ryan Hunter-Reay too. I mean, there's a certain, like, you can tell the people who watched their first IndyCar race because of Kurt Busch, because they became Ryan Hunter-Reay fans. And that's no knock. I mean, that's how we all became a fan of a driver. Usually they won the first race we watched, but it's always interesting to see that stuff. Is Sato? I guess no, Sato. Like,
he's on the way out.
Yeah, he's on the way out.
People do love Sato, but he's oval only now. So I mean, I was just Rossi, Newgarden and McLaughlin, especially Newgarden, since he's been around the longest. We have the most to compare, but he is the most under promoted driver ever, because he has everything that you would ever want in a driver.
Yeah.
Especially IndyCar, since he's an American. And he's winning championships. He's winning races.
He hasn't won. There's two things. I think that hold Newgarden back. He is, in terms of popularity, by the way, Newgarden, he is going to be the Dixon of this era. Yeah. I think for sure. He's going to be knocking on that door, top 5 wins of all time. But like, in terms of a popularity standpoint, I look at Newgarden, and the first knock, and it's really, not really a knock, but it's tough. When you drive for Penske, you're a little bit more restricted in what you can do and what you can say and how you can operate. That's a positive and a negative. The problem is with how IndyCar is now, we know that the championship isn't as valued by the broad fan base as an Indy 500. So if you aren't able to kind of show your person, I mean, but he shows his person. That's what's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. He literally walked around Mid Ohio in a Uncle Sam uniform, like costume. While
do they wear Penske like stuff in that show?
No. Well, man, okay. Sometimes I think they do have like the polos on, but most of the time it's McLaughlin in an inflatable suit because he loves those, and Joseph doing something.
Dude, I will say the Bus Bros is awesome. Like if you haven't watched it, it's great. But the other problem with like driving for Penske is that you are expected to win Indy 500s. Like Penske fans specifically get behind drivers who win the Indy 500. And so if you're not the Penske driver who's like running up front and winning Indy, I feel like it's almost like something's missing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's like he hasn't been close either. That's the other thing. Like he finished third in 16. That's like the one.
He got to the front late in 19.
Yeah,
and he was leading in 16 too. He's been close.
Tell me a 500 where it's like early in the race or late in the race where Joseph just drives up to the front and then just leads on speed and talent.
Oh, at the 500?
At the 500. Tell me a time when that's ever happened. And he's been running the 500 for, I mean, I'm being harsh now, but like he's been running the 500.
But you're not wrong. That's not an incorrect statement.
And he hasn't I don't remember a single time where he's just driven up there.
And the guys who win the race typically do that. Like Sato did that in 12.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't win the race for another 10 years, but like we saw that. And there are drivers that we've seen that from. Alex Palou, I think, is due now. Pato Ward is due. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone who was running up at the front the last couple of years, who's due for a 500. Hell, Tony Kanaan's probably going to win. I think he's a very high possibility to win this year with Arrow McLaren SP. So, but you're right, Joseph. And I think part of it's just the fact that Penske's missed at the speedway so many times, because like, you know, even the year where like Simon charged through the field and finished third, like he started like 25th, you know, it's tough to win from back there.
18 and 19, even when Power and Pagenaud won with the best cars, where was Joseph?
Yeah.
Where was he? 15. Well, no, 15 is with Carpenter.
Yeah, it was with Carpenter.
But, I mean, remember what I said about Kanaan having adversity at the speedway, overcoming it, and finally winning. I mean, that's a big thing for a lot of fans. A lot of people, if they saw Newgarden win, just like, you know,
it's like an expectation with Newgarden. But he also hasn't had like the big struggle either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at here. Is he hasn't even had the struggle yet. Like he would have to finish in the top 3 or even have be up there on speed competing for the win for me to think he's had a struggle. I mean, 1 third place in a race that finished in fuel mileage to me is not a struggle.
Yeah,
that is you finish third off fuel mileage, because
people remember Carlos Munoz more with that one than Newgarden.
Yeah, and Carlos Munoz is another example of he had a struggle and just never won it. And I even tweeted like 2 weeks ago, I was thinking about Carlos Munoz like 2 weeks ago for no reason. Was I talking about? Now here's my point. Was I talking about how disappointed I am that Newgarden hasn't won the 500 yet? No, because he hadn't struggled yet to win one.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
That is so weird. Like,
but I still, to this day, feel bad for Carlos Munoz. I mean, talking about Tony Kanaan, that race goes green. Carlos Munoz in 13 wins.
Yeah. Or he crashed. I've always thought that the two of them would have crashed and Justin Wilson would have won. So it would have been, because I feel like Tony wouldn't have lifted. Like, let's say they go side. Like Carlos was definitely not going to lift, and Tony was definitely not going to lift. If they were side by side in the last lap, they're both in the wall.
Yeah.
And who was running third would have won that race. But NASCAR, I guess we'll kind of transition away from from IndyCar.
Now we get into NASCAR for the rest of the episode, people. Get ready.
Yeah. So this is, but I guess we'll start with like, who's the next guy in NASCAR?
There's a lot of them.
Well, Chase for sure. I think like people are behind him because he kind of got the rub. He kind of got the junior fans. He was the guy who received the most junior fans, who didn't just leave once junior left. He has the legacy, he has the popularity.
He got the junior fans, and you got to remember he started in the 24, taking over Jeff Gordon's seat. So he literally got the Jeff Gordon fans and the junior fans, plus the Bill Elliott fans.
Yep.
So,
and Bill Elliott was the most popular driver in NASCAR for like 20 years in a row.
Yeah,
so
he got it all.
Yeah. So who's the guy in NASCAR? Who are the guys that are going to be the big stars going forward?
See, right now, this is where NASCAR is a little bit better off than IndyCar, I would say right now, just off of a few, like, because, I mean, you think about it, the changing of the guard in NASCAR from when I grew up has changed so dramatically. Like, think of the drivers that have retired now that were the stars. There's Dale Jr., obviously, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon. I mean, Jimmy's back, but Jimmy's not a full-time. I mean, you can count Jimmy. Carl Edwards, like those 5 guys in general ruled NASCAR when I was growing up. But the guys who have kind of replaced them are already good enough and just great personalities and great talents, like Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, Ross Chastain. We already talked about Chase Elliott. There's more that I just can't think of at the top of my head, but the point is, like, they have so many guys right now in good rides that have shown winning. But I mean, 19 different winners last year. So many guys have shown that they can win and that they're, ready to take over the marquee names like Harvick and Kurt Busch and guys like that.
You know what's interesting? There's kind of some people in the chat bringing up kind of anti-heroes. Because I think that's a big dynamic of NASCAR. It's probably different than IndyCar, is the rivalries. Like, you may have, let's say, a guy will like Chase, Larson, and who's another one? Chase, Larson. Let me try to not just do all the Hendrick drivers. And we'll say Denny, even though I don't think that would happen in real life. We'll just say that's the 3. And then they hate Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, and Ross Chastain. But it almost like brings those 3 up also, that there's an equal amount of people that hate them, because then, like, if you hate a driver, someone else is probably going to like them just as much. And so, like, that's the interesting thing to me, the interesting different dynamic is that I would say, like, Ty Gibbs is a star in NASCAR because people don't like him.
Yeah.
And it's different. And that's probably the same thing with, like, we're going to keep going back to Danica because she really is one of the most polarizing drivers of all time, in my opinion. But, like, where that didn't work in IndyCar, where the minute, like, the fans turned on her, it was over. Like, the fans hating Danica in NASCAR was great for Danica because it meant she was always going to get the Coca-Cola ad. She was always going to be a Coca-Cola Racing family driver. Like, if you look at the Coca-Cola Racing family, like, they have all the drivers that people don't like in them. It's like Austin Dillon.
Yeah. Well, they just got Chase Elliott, so they're
Chase Elliott. Yeah. Well, they got both sides of that. I feel like, Chase Elliott's polarizing. Is there anyone who's just neutral on Chase Elliott? I feel like people either hate him or love him, and he just doesn't do anything. He's just like neutral.
He doesn't do anything. He is very neutral, but you either hate him because, like, Mickey Mouse Championship, or you love him because he's the son of Bill. So I there has to be some out there, Well,
I think there's a lot of people who hate drivers because of I remember this specifically when I was growing up. I hated Dale Jr. not because Dale Jr. was a bad guy or like he did anything bad on the racetrack. It was because his fans were the worst people ever. And by the way, Junior Nation got way better when they switched from Bud to Amp Energy. Like, the minute they got sober, it was like, oh, these guys are all right. I like Dale Jr. now. But when it was the Bud car and they were hammering Buds at Talladega, boy, I hated Junior Nation. They were the worst. And I hated Dale Jr. because of it. And I'm like, and looking back on it, I'm like, I should have loved Dale Jr. Yeah. But his fans were so bad that I couldn't like him. I had to root against him, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's reasons people hate drivers sometimes are interesting. Like, most of the time, it's because they win too much. Because I did not really care for Jimmy Johnson growing up, as most kids my age did. I mean, that's still a thing. I think a lot of people probably don't like Chase Elliott because he is the most popular driver. People love to hate the things everybody loves. So that could be it.
Yeah,
so what?
No, go on.
What drivers do you see, like? Because what I think of is, like I mentioned, all the drivers growing up that I watched in NASCAR, and how most of the field has shifted. And I compare it to, and you compared it to IndyCar, as in there's actually drivers that people hate, because there's nobody driving an IndyCar that I can think of that people actively hate right now.
There's probably a couple. There's a couple that have some heat, I'd say. I think Santino is one that people either love or hate. I think Romain Grosjean is getting there with some people.
Yeah.
I think there's another one, but I'm drawing a blank. So I guess Grosjean and Santino. It's not a big list, but it's two.
Do you, like the other? Like, I thought of that, and I'm thinking in IndyCar, from when I was a kid to now, how many guys are still in NASCAR? Two. How many guys are still in IndyCar? Well, we got Dixon, we got Elio, we got Graham.
There's three.
There's four.
I don't know about Pagenaud. Pagenaud, I'd kind of.
You got to think about. Pagenaud has been in IndyCar for over 10 years.
I'd say Will Power before I say
Will Power. Well, you're just naming more than I'm thinking. Yeah. Power. There's 5.
Yeah.
I could think of Sato.
Hell, IndyCar got Jimmy Johnson. They got Jimmy Johnson post NASCAR.
So, do you think that's it? I wouldn't say a problem, but do you think that's kind of holding IndyCar back from getting the next generation?
No, that's not what's holding IndyCar back. The big thing is that with NASCAR, you have a feeder system that's nationally televised, and thus, because it's nationally televised, there's real sponsors on many of the teams, and there are people willing to put up money for drivers who have little to no backing, and you just have a bigger talent pool. And if a driver fails out of Cup, but Cole Custer is going to be a great example of this, I think. I bet you he's going to have a career resurgence. I bet you he's going to go on a freaking run this year in Xfinity, and then all of a sudden he's going to be right back in Cup. We've seen this with so many different drivers, or even drivers who can kind of have a career in Xfinity and then kind of pitch hit, run a Daytona 500 for a team, have a good run. It's tough in IndyCar because the minute you're out, and you have to go to run sports cars, So, that's the tough thing, is that once you get an IndyCar ride, you better damn well do everything you can to keep it, as long as you can keep it, because you don't know when your time's going to come up. And even guys like Tony Kanaan, he tried to retire, and then people started throwing in the best rides at him, and he's like, well, hell, I'm going to stay,
Yeah, I was thinking about it. You make a good point about the feeder series being televised and real sponsors being in it, because I was thinking about it throughout the weekend for Daytona. We're thinking Noah Gragson coming in full time, Ty Gibbs. When these guys come in, it's exciting. Mm-hmm. It's a story. When's the last time a guy has moved up from lights that you were just like, man, he's going to be incredible? Maybe Kirkwood.
Yeah.
It's not on the same level as when rookies come to NASCAR from Xfinity, though.
If Kirkwood had gone straight to Andretti, I think the hype would be different. Because as we've seen in preseason testing, he's been lights out. He's been just as fast as Colton, faster in some ways. So, I think he's going to be a challenger this year. The problem is, a lot of times too, where are rookies this year? We have 2 full season rookies, right? It's Augustine Canapino for Juncos, and then Benjamin Peterson, who just followed me today on Twitter, by the way. Thanks, Benjamin. For Foyt. The problem is that those guys are going to have trouble, making a big impact with those teams right out of the box. At the very least, they're going to get overshadowed by their teammates. In my opinion, I think Callum. I think he's ready for prime time. I think Callum's going to be tough to beat in IndyCar this year. I don't know if he's going to be championship level yet. We're going to have to see how the Juncos team fares. But I mean, if you look at last year at Laguna getting on the front row, and then later on in the season being able to, or later on in testing, I mean, he was right up there at Thermal. I don't remember exactly where he was at Sebring, but I think, Augustine Canapino is going to have a very uphill battle to best Callum in year one. And that's the same thing with Ben against Santino. Santino is a much more experienced driver, even in Indy cars. So, that's the tough thing too, right? Is that without a feeder system that a lot of people pay attention to, it's just tough to get momentum behind drivers. And that's why you see so many drivers like the hyped rookies are always Jimmy and Roman Grosjean,
the guys coming from
Kyle
F1.
Larson. Yeah. Or guys coming from Cup, guys coming from elsewhere. It's not coming out of the specific feeder system. Or if you get lucky, I think Colton was hyped.
Colton and Pato for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a special case because, Colton had a name and we knew who he was. Pato made his name by going toe to toe with Herta. And then they both were going to come in at the same time at one point for the same team. That didn't end up working out. But yeah, that's a big problem with IndyCar is just like, the feeder system on paper looks good, but sometimes it fails to keep guys in for a long period of time. And you can't go back either. Like you see some of the guys who've kind of gotten bounced out of IndyCar in the last couple of years. It's not like it's a realistic expectation to go back to lights. Like we've seen at least one guy do it. Matthew Brabham was somewhat successful last year doing it, but he didn't win the championship. And now
Clayman
what?
DeMello did it.
Clayman DeMello did it, but he had it's a little bit different. I mean, Clayman DeMello, at least at the time, had a lot of money. I don't know what his status is, and I would imagine the fact that he's not in a ride right now would probably indicate where that stands. But that's the tough thing with IndyCar. It's a lot to do with money. And there aren't like sponsors coming up with people or people, Noah Gragson really made a name for himself with Junior Motorsports. And he wouldn't have had those opportunities if Dale Jr. hadn't had a sponsor to keep him in that car as long as he did,
Yeah.
Okay. We've made you wait long enough. Kyle, did you watch the video last night?
I watched the beginning of it. I saw your stuff.
Okay. Well, I was wondering how much you had watched of it. You know what? What are your thoughts on the Daytona 500? Because the people know mine to a certain extent, but we'll let you have the floor to begin with because I think you have not had your say yet.
I'm probably less mad about it than you are because you tend to be really mad about a lot of things that I don't really care about.
Such as examples.
I noticed the joke in the beginning about Wendy's and Coke and all the subliminal ads that you hate.
Right.
I don't really care. Like I thought the Wendy's thing was funny. I think the Coke driver family is cool because they've done that for how many years? They need to they that is something that actually recently they haven't done much with and they're starting to do more with that they should be doing more with.
Well, I think the big problem with the it's not subliminal. It's just the fact that they ran so many ads and then on top of that we're like, let's go picture in picture and do the Wendy's onboard. That was what I had a problem with. Like that stuff can go in the pre-race where I don't give a damn.
How do you feel like about? Because I know Slap made a tweet and I know Larry McReynolds said something. How do you feel about that? About because I'm pretty sure there are numbers that the amount of ads are actually on par or less than the last couple of years.
Yeah,
which makes sense because the ads have always been bad, but like Like, because I noticed, everybody watching noticed, and it's tricky because you can't say less ads because they know more than we do. How are they going to pay for it?
Well, what?
Two,
Okay.
Objectively, it was horrible to watch with how many ads there were. Like, oh my God, every 5 laps, maybe. Like,
it was bad.
Usually when it's bad, it's like, oh my gosh, there's a caution every 10 laps. This time, there was a commercial every 5 laps. It was ridiculous.
Well, I think one of the big things, and one of the misleading things, in my opinion, especially with Larry Mack, I know what he's defending his employer, right? Like I understand why he said what he said on Sirius today, but like the big difference and what I think you're missing, or not you, but like I think what he misses, or if you're not watching the broadcast, you miss, is the fact of how intrusive the ads were. And if you look at this year's Daytona 500, a lot of it was run under the green flag. Those years that were given as examples, 2021 and 2020, if I remember correctly, especially 2020, that was a caution-filled race. So the fact that you say, well, there was 2 less ads than the 2020 race. Yeah, well, of course there would be, because I think the 2020 race had about 3 red flags in it, where they probably ran 2 or 3 commercials during it. Like it's not the same or fair comparison. I think Slap's one wasn't. I mean, the problem with Slap's comparison, I don't think it was a bad comparison. But I think the big thing is, like, I don't remember exactly how I felt about the commercials in 2007. It didn't stand out to me then, which could mean one of 2 things. The first thing would be that the commercials were better spaced out. They were less they might have been less long too. They might have been shorter in length. I mean, like the difference between showing 5 ads versus 2 ads in a commercial break is what, a minute and a half? Like, how many laps is that? That's almost 3 laps of the Daytona 500 that you would see versus not see. There's just not enough data there, especially with it not being fresh in my mind too. And the second thing is, like, from that perspective, it's like when you look at where we are now in this country, how we view auto racing versus in 2007, like Formula One has changed things here. I mean, it's a huge, like, I guarantee you so many of us who were complaining about it yesterday have been watching commercial-free F1 broadcasts for the last 2 years. And it's probably skewed our perception. And I think the streaming, just in general, like people are now used to 5-second skip ad everywhere. It's just a different world now. It's so different. And I feel like Fox's broadcast is not only not adapting to it, but I feel like they're almost leaning into their worst tendencies. Because again, we are not all insane. All right. We all noticed it yesterday.
Yeah,
that means something changed, and maybe Slap will go in, and I hope he does. We'll like do a deep dive and like time things out and explain it. Because I think that's probably what he will end up doing, by the way. I have no inside information on that, but that just seems like something Slap Shoes would do. And hopefully someone will like dive into it and really kind of almost do an autopsy on this broadcast, because it was bad. It was hard to watch. And which was weird, because like watching the pre-race was really well timed. I felt like I didn't feel like I was being advertised to too much. There were some advertising segments that were kind of cheesy, but that's pre-race. It doesn't matter that much. The race matters a whole lot more. I almost feel like Fox has forgotten that we're tuning in to watch a 500-mile race. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the thing, is I feel like nowadays I'm complaining more about the broadcast than I am the racing, because the race yesterday was good. Like, it was great, I thought.
Yeah, it was one of the better ones. I really wish they hadn't thrown a yellow. I would have loved to have seen how long it would have gone caution free.
Yeah, don't talk about the green white checkered. We got to wait for the get you in trouble segment.
Oh no, we're not getting there yet. Yeah, we're not getting there yet. But I will say that one of the things that I realized was that, like, man, like that green flag pit stop sequence up until the point where the Stewart-Haas cars crashed, like I enjoyed the hell out of that. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I remember this. Like this, hey, the Daytona 500. But like the problem is that the broadcast is bad, but like NASCAR's format doesn't do it any favors either.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other thing that's upsetting is that now with the stages, you're like counting down to another commercial break.
Pretty much.
Like you now have essentially a countdown time. Like the way they split up the race makes it really easy to tell how many commercials are actually being shoved into the race, because not only is it like lap 89 of 200, but it's like lap 30 out of 80 in the stage. And then you're like just seeing that counting down and seeing how many laps in between the stage, how many commercials in each stage. That was silly. Very upset.
Yeah, I don't like stages either. I think we all know that.
But it's not just, but it's just the format. The format like just totally drew a big arrow. Maybe that's what changed. Is just people are seeing through it now more. But It drew a big arrow on how much advertising was being done during the race.
Yeah, I was actually watching it in here throughout a race weekend, off and on yesterday, and I noticed that how many ads there were. It was just terrible. But the race was really good. The pre-race, I got to see. You made fun of me for watching race day. Why did you make fun of me of watching race day?
It's bad. It's so soulless now. I can't.
Listen, what did you expect? I'm like, I'm the biggest like Trevor Bayne fan on this planet.
Okay.
The guy's speaking about that he's on 500 in pre-race. I'm going to listen to Trevor Bayne, all right?
That's acceptable. Okay. I rescind it because I was just curious why you would subject yourself to that. That makes sense.
I wanted to listen to Trevor Bayne, man. I wanted to know what Trevor Bayne had to say. I'm sorry, I wanted to hear what my favorite NASCAR driver of all time had to say.
I will say this. He almost dropped Black Flags Matter's name on air, I guarantee you. Because like Shannon Spake, there was somebody said Mickey Mouse on the Truck Series broadcast. She's like, "What's this Mickey Mouse stuff like?" And like Trevor looked like he bit his tongue, like he knew what the Mickey Mouse thing was. So I don't know. Maybe somebody asked him about Buddha Bellies.
How much of the pre-race did you watch?
I started essentially. Well, I went and got a Joyzy Mike sub, man. So I was on the road, but I tried to time it so I would come back because the closest Jersey Mike's to my house is like 30 minutes away. So I timed it so I would come back right around the time the Fox coverage would pick up. So I don't think I quite caught the beginning of the Fox coverage. There's
a few things that are important. Did you see the stuff that they prepared for this broadcast were awesome? The 98
the
radioactive
Bill France stuff? No, I missed that. I did miss that.
Oh, the 98 radioactive is so cool.
Did they play that on Fox?
That was on race day, I think.
Okay, yeah, I for sure missed that then.
The only thing I missed was the VR race, which I feel like was stupid.
It wasn't stupid. The only thing I had a problem with was the ride height on the Gen 6 car. It was too high, but outside of that, it was fine.
The Bill France stuff was it was a perfect mix of cringe and cool for me. How do you feel about that? That's like the best way to explain this.
It was made with love.
Yeah.
So I give it a pass.
He had a recognizable actor in it. I don't know his name.
He's one of the Fox guys. He's just probably one of the guys they can just call up and be like, go to the studio.
That was still pretty cool though to have a real recognizable actor in that. I feel like the stuff they prepared in the pre-race was pretty cool.
The pre-race was the highlight. It was the highlight.
Now, one of the points that I made during it, and I think there came a point in pre-race where it was like an hour until green flag where I went to Twitter to complain about the amount of pre-race and why this race isn't green yet. And I just looked at my feed and there's like 30 other people saying the same thing. So I don't think I'm alone. But there came a point in pre-race where it was like, we've been watching pre-race for like 2.5 hours and the race still has an hour until it's green. What the hell?
And they also advertised a 2:30 start, and then you see a Matt Weaver tweet that says, "Oh wait, no, the green flag's at 3:14," and it's like, oh boy. Well, that's here's the problem with the Daytona 500. I thought they did a really good job of telling all these stories. None of them matter because of how random the race is. You'd have a better pre-race if you did 30 minutes and just had the race hub guys throwing darts at a board that has all the driver's face on it. Because that would be better analysis of the demolition derby that's going to happen in the last 20 laps. And I hate to say it that way, and be that cynical, but like that's kind of what the Daytona 500 is now. like we tried to sit here and like be logical about our picks last week, and I was just watching them all fall by the wayside or get wrecked. Like Bubba Wallace just gets turned into the wall, like by his team owner, like 20 laps into the race, and it's like, what? Did that really just happen? And during a commercial too, because of course we missed it, but that was par for the course for the broadcast.
Yeah, it is a little random. That's with how long it was. There was that point an hour before the race, and the reason I think I felt this way, I was thinking about it, was like everybody's trying to be, besides the interviews and some of the cool segments, it just felt like they were running in circles. Like it was like every 5 minutes, is this the year that Kyle Busch is going to win the Daytona 500? 10 minutes later, is this the year Kyle Busch is going to win the Daytona 500? I don't know. We'll have to see. Have another hour until green flag, though. Like that's what it felt like half the time.
The worst. Chris Myers. Oh god.
It was just Chris Myers and Clint Boyer just going back, and Tony Stewart just going back and forth about the same thing for 3 hours.
Yeah, it's too long. But I will say it's good that they actually have debate, because that's what's missing from, like, say, an IndyCar pre-race. Nobody gives an opinion at all. It is the most vanilla, boring thing you could possibly watch, unfortunately.
Listen, nobody in IndyCar ever has opinions that they state publicly, okay? Stop getting me mad. We're talking about the Daytona 500.
Oh, okay.
Getting on the subject right now.
We'll leave that for the St. Pete preview, I guess. No, but I think I was going somewhere with that. I saw something in the chat that was getting me. Okay, never mind. Dang it, I had a thought and then it ran away from my mind. I was thinking about the pre-race. Now it's gone. It's gone. What an unfortunate turn of events there. The big thing. Oh, I guess it's just the randomness of the race. Like that's the big issue with the Daytona 500. You want to treat it like it's the Super Bowl. And like the Super Bowl almost warrants as much pregame as they do for it, because they can talk about so many things and chances are they're actually going to happen. In the Daytona 500, that's what I remember. The biggest cringe moment in the pre-race for me was the big segment where they're sitting there with Martin Truex Jr. and going, wow, Martin, you're like a new man. What changed in the offseason? And you're just going there like, oh my God. Like he broke up with his girlfriend and like, it's like, It's a little tone deaf. Gee, what's your secret, Martin? What'd you do? What changed? And then Martin's like, well, just changed my outlook on life. I don't know. It's like, right. I bet you did.
I bet. Oh, gee Willikers. I wonder what it is.
Well, that's what everybody who's like plugged in was thinking watching that.
Yeah.
I know not everybody is plugged in, so they could build up a storyline where it's like, wow, you won the Clash. How great is that? You missed the chase last year. It was probably innocent, but like, even in the Kyle Busch segment, they brought up the Mexico thing.
Yeah,
and he was just like, I already did it. I already talked about that. It's like, okay, well, at least you addressed it.
Did you notice how many times Fox tried to cover up the 3G sponsor?
Yeah, I did. I made a tweet about it.
Yeah,
they did not want that pot leaf anywhere near.
They threw the yellow so fast for Suarez in the end because they didn't want the 3G car to win the race.
Is that we just have to? Is this just where we are now? Are we here? Are we at this point?
Yes. I thought about this, and it's gonna make you mad. And I tweeted it last night. So green, white checkers, they suck, right? Mm-hmm. I don't like them. I wish the race would have just finished under yellow at 500 miles because I'm purist, and that makes all the entertainment people like Xander Clemens mad. So, but if we're going to have green, white checkers, why don't we go all the way, and why don't we throw the yellow on the white as well? Why doesn't the race just have to finish under green if we're going to do them anyways? Because I'm with you, David. Green, white checkers suck. But if we do them, why don't we just go all the way? Just fully commit. Why do we still enter into yellow if we have a green, white checkered rule?
It has to be the teams. The teams have to probably be drawing a line in the sand somewhere. Because let's say you have to cross the line with the checkered flag out. Mm-hmm. There would be nobody left. They were, I mean, and when you do that, because this is the big problem I had with the Indy 500 this year, is that, when you red flag it with 3 laps to go, that was only ever going to end one way, and it was going to be in a big crash. I'm glad it wasn't as big as maybe I feared it was going to be sitting in the grandstands at the time. But like that, you are playing with fire when you say, hey, this is the biggest prize in our sport, and you got 2 laps to settle it. And especially if NASCAR went out there and said, we're not going to throw the checker flag until one of you SOBs crosses the line. Whether you're running on fire or not, doesn't matter to me. I think a certain percentage of the fan base would want to see it. I think Fox would probably want it to be that way. I can guarantee you the team owners wouldn't want it. And I guarantee you because like, think about the chances, like what was think about the Xfinity finish where essentially you had the Ryan Newman crash happen, but nobody hit Sam Mayer. Like, you are playing with fire when you have those restarts and everybody just going for it. The more you multiply those opportunities, the higher the chances you're going to have the big one that you don't want. And the big one that you don't want is another driver dead or fans or whatever. You like, there is a certain level of risk in racing, and not only from a purist standpoint for me, but from a safety standpoint, you really only want to have one white flag lap. You don't want to have multiple ones, because for the biggest prize, people are going to do absolutely. We saw it last year, and it wasn't even the biggest prize. Ross Chastain turned his goddamn brain off and drove around the outside of a Martinsville flat out. Took his hands off the steering. Like, people are willing to do crazy things. That's why we like watching racing. But it's the rules makers' responsibility to limit the amount of stupidity that can possibly happen. So it really comes down to team owner wallets and probably the insurance companies, in my opinion. Now to your point, in a perfect world, if you're gonna say we're gonna guarantee a green flag finish, well, then you better damn deliver on that. But it's just, from a humanity standpoint, it's probably just not realistic to do it.
From the humanity standpoint, a green white checkered stupid anyways.
This is what I brought up in the video last night. Think about it this way, Kyle. What would have had, like, let's say, because the race ended under yellow either way, right? If you just had ended it at lap 200, Kyle Busch, in his first race for RCR in a black car, wins his first Daytona 500. What was wrong with that story?
Exactly.
What? You got the same result.
In 20, 30 years, nobody would even remember it was a yellow flag finish. The only reason that it became a big deal, there was a point in time where it was a huge talking point of the Indy 500, and it kind of is now because we red flag it. But the only reason it was a huge deal with the 500 is because there was a span of a number of years where it just finished under yellow every year, and it was
5 years in a row. It's from 2010 to 2013.
That was the only reason, and and nobody's gonna remember years down the line if it finishes under yellow, and it's not gonna be that way every year. It
might be with Daytona, but it ends under yellow anyway.
Yeah, if it ends under yellow anyways.
That was kind of what I looked at with the Indy 500.
Some years it ends under yellow anyways with a green white checker in a Daytona. Some years it does. They don't even have overtime.
Yeah. Well, last year they didn't. They went 500 miles last year.
And you know what you do when you don't have a green white checkered, and it does under yellow, and it ends under yellow. You don't give us another 30. You don't waste another 30, 40 minutes of our time for it to more than likely be the same winner. Now, it wasn't this time, but more than likely, 90% of the time, I want to say, when I watch an overtime finish, guess what happens? Any other track besides Daytona, guess what happens? The same guy who was leading when the race was supposed to end wins the freaking race. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's my big criticism with doing it for the Indy 500 is just like, especially now where they really have a tough time passing anyway. Like, what are you changing? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, guess
Like,
what? Marcus Ericsson was leading under the red flag and then wins the race, and it still ended under yellow. So
right.
that's fun.
I think people look at like 2014 Indy 500 as like the shining example of like, well,
that's the only good example.
But they had 8 laps. They red flagged it with 8 laps to go. Like they had time to set up a finish. When you do it with that few laps to go, like there's no such thing as sorting things out. There's 2 things that are going to happen, and both of them are crashes. Like it's very rare that and like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to change the result? Like, because that's, and I'm not accusing NASCAR of anything. I want to be really clear here, but like it sometimes feels like they're just trying to get the result that they want. Like they threw that caution so fast for Suarez, and regardless of whether they thought it was a safety issue or not, just they didn't throw a caution at all earlier in the race with the 15 car spinning into the grass over there.
Yeah, it ended up being necessary for a yellow because he did end up being stranded. But it's just like the minute it looked like he saved it, it was already yellow. Because I was thinking in my head, I was like, oh, that might not be a caution. It was already yellow.
Well,
like before I even had time to think.
How many laps to go were they coming to? They weren't coming to the white, were they? Or were they coming to the white?
They were coming to like three to go, I think, or 2 to go.
Okay, then they didn't need to throw the yellow as quickly as they did.
No.
Like, because it could have been, like, I guess I could have maybe understood it if they're coming to the white flag and they're like, well, we're going to have to make a judgment call here because we want to try to get a green flag finish.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. I mean, even the fact that race control is looking at that and thinking that is wrong to me. And that's the problem, too, is the judgment calls. Like, not just the fact that they have to do green white checkers, but now like each wreck is like judged about like, well, how bad was that? Can we let them race back? Can we not let them race back? It's like we've seen that a couple of times where sometimes it'll go, sometimes it won't.
That's the biggest thing that's like just sucks about the end of the Daytona 500 usually, or a lot of super speedway races really, where it's like I hate it. It's so like there's nothing really you can do about it because racing back to the line is in some cases pretty freaking dangerous, but like it's just so deflating because it's like I don't want this to be called off based on when the yellow came out and who was ahead of who, because there are sometimes I remember an Xfinity race where I think at Daytona where I still feel like Allgaier was the winner and it was called differently. I don't want it to be called off that sucks. That's so
Brennan
deflating.
Poole won a race where they said he didn't win it.
Yes. When they race back to the line and then you call it, don't get me going.
Yeah, the ones where they throw the yellow when they're inside of the checkered, I at least understood this one because, Larson took a hellacious hit, and so did Brad Keselowski, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking, and they made the right call to call the yellow. I want to be very clear there, but, like, you're right. Like, it's weird when they don't actually race back. It's it's tough. They're in a pickle, but we'll see with the TV. What I'm very interested in is the TV rating. The Clash was down 15%. The duels were up 5%. So I guess we're going to find out how much, if any, the commercials affected the race. I don't know. I honestly wonder if the duels had something to do with the fact that or the increase for the duels was the fact that you had so many big name drivers in the open cars and kind of drawing some interest there.
Yeah. Like you had to watch, you watching Travis Pastrana and Jimmy and Connor Daly.
Yeah. And I could believe that an IndyCar audience could cause a 5% bump.
Yeah. I would hope so. I'd be pretty depressed if it didn't. Ooh.
So I guess we haven't even talked about the winner yet. I've given some of my thoughts in a video. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., how do you feel like in a bubble he's a Daytona 500 winner?
Deserving.
All right.
Long time coming, honestly. He won the pole for the race, and he was a guy.
He should have won last year.
He's a guy that's always been in the top 10, and it's just like seeing him get it done with JTG Doherty Racing. My favorite part was the fact that JTG won. And man, you know I was behind it because he's a sprint car driver.
Yeah,
owns a World of Outlaws team that may or may not have a driver from Worcester, Ohio, on it. So there were a lot of reasons for me to really enjoy this win. But like, he really deserved it. It's been a long time coming for multiple years, and seeing it done with a small team, so cool, so freaking cool. I'm so glad that it went his way. That was the one thing at the end of the race where it was just like, he had to be so lucky to be in that position when the caution came out, where in other years, there's been so many years where it did not. And I can't imagine what that feeling felt like when the yellow comes out and you realize that you this time out of the last maybe 10 races, the Daytona 500s, that it actually went his way. Like that's so cool.
Yeah, no, I was happy for Ricky. That's a good thing for him. It like of the people who could, well, Logano would have been, because Logano runs good too. Like I think you can't say the winner didn't deserve it. I did like the idea of the meme win with Travis Pastrana getting that huge push from Almirola. I thought there was a real chance of that right at the end.
The whole race, I tweeted it multiple times. My dream win, like what I wanted to see big time, was a Jimmy win. That's what I would have.
Boy, he looked
wanted
good
the most.
He looked good.
Like he was who I was rooting for the entire race, because I was just thinking in my head, like, could you imagine him getting out of the car in victory lane, winning a third Daytona 500 after going to IndyCar?
That's what he was dreaming of.
Like, man, I hope he comes back, and I hope it happens, because that'd be so cool. Travis Pastrana ran really well. I hope he comes back. Honestly, 11th would have had a top 5, dude. Like, I mean, he lost laps in the early part of the race, came back I think I tweeted this. I was like, it's 14 to go in the Daytona 500. Travis Pastrana is inside the top 20 with a clean race car on the lead lap. Like,
yeah,
go like 2 or 3 years ago and tell yourself that.
Well, and he had help. Like Bubba Wallace was like pushing him.
Yeah,
like they were moving there at the end, and then somehow I don't know how Almirola got behind Pastrana, because somehow Wallace and Pastrana got split up, and I think that was the end of that dream, because the minute somebody wasn't going to be a teammate with Pastrana, it was all over.
See, so Ricky winning, he definitely in the end there when it was happening, he wasn't the guy I was polling for. He wasn't the main guy out of that pack. I think was my guy, but when it happened, I was okay with it. Like this is a great winner. I think he fully deserves it. I think it's awesome. The only disappointing part, obviously, is the way it was lining up. Like you said, Pastrana's push from Almirola, whatever Larson was doing, Bubba was, coming in. He was going to make something happen. I just would have loved to have seen how that finish would have played out had they made it to the line. Like, what would have happened?
Yeah, who knows? Well, I think there was for sure a crash coming. I just wish it would have happened a little bit later. Because I would have liked to have seen, because like all the runs were like forming right then. Like Allmendinger, like that's what I felt good about, was saying Allmendinger was going to do well, and you were like, no, he won't. And like, there's Allmendinger, he's there, pushing Larson too. I believe. I mean, he was leading. He like drove to the lead. Yeah. He forgot it was a super speedway race, I think, because he went with like 12 to go, and I was sitting there going, AJ, what are you doing? Like that was the move with 1 to go that you should have made.
There came a point when I think it was before the first yellow, and it was when you had the RFK cars and the RCR cars 1 through 4, and I think Byron and Stenhouse. And then Byron and Stenhouse behind them. There came a point with like 5 or 6 to go where I was just screaming in my head. I was like, if you're William Byron sitting 5th right now, and you're sitting there waiting for like 3 or 2 to go, like it's going to be too late. So why not with 5 to go? And it happened. I think this at the end of all the super speedways. Why is 5th and 6th on back like staying in the single file line in the bottom. Why? Absolutely why?
Well,
because what always happens statistically, it's like they don't think. If it gets to 3 or 2 to go, they make their move, but then by that moment, third and fourth are already making their move, and then it's too late for fifth, sixth on back. If you make your move earlier, guess what? You have a chance.
I can tell you from racing in your Freedom 100 what the thought process is to stay fifth on the bottom. Is that you're thinking the guys up front are all going to crash and they're going to go up the track and you're going to be the one that's the first one to see daylight. That has to be what they were thinking. Unfortunately, William was the one who caused the crash. So, yeah, that didn't work out too well for him. I really liked the idea of the 3-car pushing Kyle Busch to the win. That's the one thing that I'm really disappointed that we didn't get to see. Kyle Busch let us all know what he was thinking.
Would he have Almirola Kyle Busch?
No way. 0 chance. No, because here's the thing. I genuinely believe, like some people were saying, like, oh, I don't think Kyle Busch likes Austin. I bet he loves Austin Dillon. I bet you he loves him now. Because, like, they were saying on the broadcast the whole time, like, he's the reason Kyle Busch is at RCR. And if Kyle Busch is happy at RCR, Austin Dillon is happy at RCR. So from my perspective, if you're Austin Dillon, there's no bigger hero move for your team than to push the guy that you advocated for to win the Daytona 500. Like, I feel like he would have given it like if it would have been safe for him to pull out and try to pass him, sure. But in terms of like a team move, I think Austin would have stayed on the bumper of that 8-car.
Man, the more you're saying it, the 3-car pushing the 8 to the line at the Daytona 500 would have been so cool.
Yeah.
That would have been,
and technically we did see that happen for the Daytona 500. It just went 30 more miles. They didn't drive the 8-car into victory lane, and Ricky Stenhouse got the trophy. Is what happened. Jeremy Mayfield won the Daytona 500. Like we're in that timeline. Think about that. we're in that timeline. All right, let's do some super chats, shall we? I didn't even make a banner for super chats. That's a problem. Super chats. Banner. Here we go.
Professional, David.
Look at that. Hey, that was professional. That was like 2 seconds of dead air. Let's see. Oh, I made the thumbnails look way too similar. M. Martin fan for life for $19.99. Thank you very much. Says, I went back and recorded the race, roughly calculated just over 1/3 of the airtime between the green to checker was commercials, plus add in the race ads. 1/3 of the broadcast. And I guess he was not counting the in-race ads. Well, no wonder it was so disjointed. I'm surprised it's only 1/3, to be honest with you. It probably would be more with all the ad reads that they did. Alexander Stegall says, Kyle mentions how Tony Kanaan is quote-unquote funny. Why don't more fans like drivers with more professional personalities like Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Larson, Tony Schumacher, Chase Elliott, and others? Kyle, that was directed at you.
Because people like funny content and funny people. I think people generate towards, like, they in general gravitate towards people with more of a goofy attitude, someone that doesn't take things as serious because that is fun. But yeah, I mean, kind of right. But I mean, guys like Hinchcliffe, like look at the guys who are the most popular, like Hinchcliffe. The guy was funny, right? I mean, he wasn't as good as Joseph on the track, but he was funny. Okay, Trevor's in the background trying to mess me up, and he succeeded. But
attaboy, Trevor.
But yeah, I mean, you look at the guys who are the most popular, and for some reason, the most popular were the funny ones. And why? I think people just gravitate more towards people who don't take things as seriously, because I think that's how most of us are.
People look at that as authenticity. It's harder to sell authenticity as being stoic, I guess. People assume you're hiding something. Although I think, I believe some drivers are just that, like stoic. Like I believe that like Alexander Rossi does have a personality, but like I believe that he's like deadpan the entire time. Like I don't think he's just like goofy. Like he's not the guy at the party with the lampshade on his head. You know what I mean? Like that's just not him. And so that's his authentic personality. But I think people look at it as being inauthentic, which is incorrect. But that's just how people are.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's also kind of, you know, like I'm someone who I don't take as many things seriously, I guess. So it's like I kind of relate. They're gonna make him kind of relatable, like Hinchcliffe. You know, when he's doing something very, I would say, I don't know the best way to word this, but it would be like meme worthy. Like I don't know. I find that relatable. I think it's funny, so it makes me like that driver. I guess.
Well, a lot of people watch racing for entertainment. Like most people watch it for entertainment. So if you are an entertaining personality, like chances are you're going to appeal to people.
Like, I mean, it's based on you, I guess. Like who you want to see, who you prefer to see, what type of person you want to root for. But like, I will tell you, I really enjoy Bus Bros Joseph Newgarden versus Penske Perfect Joseph Newgarden. I don't want to see the guy give me the same, professional spiel on TV every time. I want to thank Hitachi and the guys back in the shop. I want to see the guy in the Uncle Sam costume talking to the fans on top of motorhomes, screaming like a bald eagle. Like, that's what I want to see. Like, I don't want to see the thanks Hitachi.
You don't want to see Outrun the Sun, Joseph, is what you're saying.
I like Outrun the Sun, Joseph. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Boy, we see enough of him in May. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't want to make fun. I don't want to say I don't want to see Outrun the Sun, Joseph, because we see him so many times that it's become a meme-worthy thing.
He's a tradition. He's almost Outrun the Sun. Joseph is pretty much the new Gomer Pyle.
It's good too. It's reminding you just to.
That's my goal, is to not be a lobster at St. Pete. We're gonna see if I can be held to that standard.
It's funny because it's on the Jumbotron so often, but it's also like, yes, put sunscreen on. Like, take care of yourself.
What's more frequent, Outrun the Sun or a track inspection?
Oh, well, they happen at the same time. That's the why.
It's a trick question.
Yeah, it's track inspection, and hi, I'm Joseph Newgarden, reminding you to Outrun the Sun.
Napa Racing
fan. There's the inside joke, guys.
That's not even an inside joke. Hey, it's not an inside joke because guess what, Kyle? You're about to get mad. They used to stream practices for everybody on YouTube using the track feed.
I want to believe that we're weird and nobody else noticed it as much as we did.
Well, maybe. I mean, we are weird.
I don't know. Hands up in the chat if you remember Outrun the Sun and you know what we're talking about. Because I don't think as many people do as you would hope, David.
Well, probably not. I mean, to be fair, like essentially, for the most part, let's say probably since 2016, I have lived at the track every May. Like, I have managed to be there almost every day since 2016 that they're running. So yeah, I mean, like, I would be the person and we would be the people, because we've been there so much in a relatively short period of time. We would notice those patterns. That's something to think about, because I'm thinking like back like 2014, 2015, I had to miss days, but like, I think 16 on, I'm pretty much was able to finagle my schedule to be at the track. So it's pretty neat. I skipped a lot of studying for finals to go to the racetrack. I'll just say that earlier in my schooling career. Not a good student, David Land. Not a good student. Got good grades. Not a good student. Napa Racing Fan 927 says, "How would you change the super speedway package? I miss when these races had strategy and the leader had control of the race. It was not a sitting duck." You got to find a way to bring handling back into it, I think. I mean, like, people got mad at me for pointing it out, but like the first two rows did not change, or the starting field did not essentially change for like the first 10 laps. And when you got 10 laps and nobody can move, no one can do anything, no one's separating, there's no coming and going whatsoever. Maybe there was a little bit in the back with Jimmy and Kyle Busch and a few others, we didn't see that in the broadcast, and it certainly wasn't happening in the top 20, the drivers who are probably going to fight it out for the win at the end. So, like that would be the big thing that we're missing if you go back to watch the golden era of NASCAR. Like it's handling to me. It's the biggest. If they could bring handling back, it would handling and no stage cautions, I think, would improve the show mightily.
Yeah, take away downforce, add horsepower, and give the track like 10, 15 more years of aging. You got yourself a little bit better package.
I say we just explode jet dryers on the damn thing until that thing's aged 15 years.
Yeah, make it. We need bumpy Daytona back, and we need more horsepower and less downforce.
I couldn't say it any better. Nick says 2 things: thoughts on RFK racing, and do you think we could be a guest on each other's podcast? Think we could get the schedules to work? Well, podcast requests, I don't know. I get so many podcast requests you wouldn't believe. I do have my own podcast. You're listening to it. It's the David Lamb Podcast. But the big thing, and I'm glad you brought it up, RFK. I thought for sure they were going to win that race with about 20 laps to go. They controlled it. Controlled the race. And we kind of saw RFK become the RFK that we saw last year in the duels, where it was like, whoop, they're back. And then they left for an entire season, and now they're back. So
they won a race.
They did. Old Christopher Buescher. But that kind of dominance, we have not seen that for a while. I thought that was really kind of neat to see that team work that strategy the way that they did and control the race. And that's another team, Kyle, to your point about RCR. I think had it come down to it, whichever car was leading at the white flag, the other car was not coming off the bumper.
Christopher Buescher was not going to do anything to his team owner at the end of that race.
And same for when he was leading. I think Brad was going to push him just as hard if Buescher was in the lead versus Keselowski.
Yeah, I think Brad really wants to win this race, though. That's why I really felt bad for him in the end when he just got shuffled out and thrown to the wayside.
Well, and they got screwed by the race going 30 more miles because they both had to pit. So they got completely taken out.
I think Brad is going into like year 14, 15 next year and trying to win the Daytona 500.
Yep.
Think about that. Like we're getting there.
How crazy is that? It's so crazy to think of the guys who had, like the way the Daytona 500 is now, like the legends don't win it.
Yep. Yeah. That was Clint Boyer. I think that was actually Kevin Harvick's point of how much it meant to win that race, because you don't look at the guys who won it, you look at the guys who haven't won it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas like the Indy 500, like I mean, you're looking at the guys who won it, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys, like guys that haven't won it, like Michael. Like there's more legends who have won the Indy 500 than guys who haven't. I think there's more legends who haven't won the Daytona 500 than have, or at least have many. Because Tony Stewart made a point that the 2 most winning drivers at Daytona overall is him and Dale Sr. And the 2 of them combined have won Daytona 500.
Didn't he say like Kyle Busch was 3rd? Wasn't that his next point? Was it Kyle or Harvick? One of those 2 has a lot of wins.
It's Harvick. Too. Kyle Busch, I don't think has I don't think he has a single win at Daytona, honestly.
Not one?
He's never won a spring race or a summer race, I don't think.
Surely he won an Xfinity race.
I don't think so.
Well, all right, chat will tell us.
It's always been, I think Daytona's always been his Achilles heel.
KFB has won at Daytona, so switch. Kyle won the summer race in 08. He won a summer race. Yeah.
In 08? 08? Okay, that kind of makes sense.
08.
Because I remember it was like 09 was the year he
won the truck race in 2014, and he won the Coke 400 in 08. Well, thank you, chat.
So 2
wins. 2 wins.
Kyle Busch only has 2 wins. Yeah. Okay. Well, then he has 2.
It made me.
All right, we're going off the rails now.
Kyle Busch only had 2 wins. Hey, crap. All right.
For the viewers listening and not watching.
Oh yeah, the Bucky puppet's out.
Yeah, the Bucky puppet's
I always forget.
If you haven't already noticed.
Listen, it's episode 4. It's the Harvick episode. I'm, my old age is showing. Napa Racing Fan says, favorite race at Fontana, RIP Auto Club 97 to 2023. Kyle, I'll let you take that one first. Favorite race at Fontana?
2011, all the way. Fantastic.
NASCAR? Well, that has to be NASCAR at that point.
No, it was NASCAR. I'm thinking NASCAR.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when
2015 IndyCar then.
Yeah, he did not specify what series.
Well, then 2015 Fontana for obvious reasons. If you don't know this, I'm from Ohio, and I've been a Graham Rahal fan since I was a little kid. I was about knee high when I became a Graham Rahal fan, and I was an IndyCar fan for almost 2008 to 2015 is a long time. Let's just say that. And so 2008, I was like 6 or 7, right? So like I don't really remember Graham Rahal winning. So I grew up my entire life basically without seeing a Graham Rahal win. And I was like 15. I'm telling you, he won that race, and I freaking cried, dude. Like I was so happy. So
you were spoiled in 2015.
I was very spoiled in 2015. I have so much Steak and Shake merchandise, you can't even believe it, dude. But yeah, 2015 Fontana for sure.
I'm going to give another one. I'm also going to give an IndyCar race. 2002 IRL, I think, is a pretty good one. Spoiler alert, like close your ears for 2 seconds if you don't know the finish of this one. But essentially, it's like a wheel banging IRL finish. Sam Hornish and Jacques Lazier essentially welded together for the whole last lap, and they come across the line. I mean, just neck and neck. I think that one is one I specifically remember. On the NASCAR side, it's 2013. Like for me, I think that finish was just fantastic. I mean, it's a shame Denny got hurt, but like that was the classic NASCAR finish and one that Kyle Busch won. So that would be my opinion.
2011, man. The way Harvick just like rips the freaking top, man, like in that race was just awesome.
I'll tell you what a tragedy that Fontana's going away.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it. I hate it.
There's still time to change your mind. There's still time. I mean, NASCAR, the dozers have not done anything yet. I mean, maybe they've taken some grandstands down, but hey, that'll just make the IndyCar crowd look better when they come back.
It's okay.
Do not do it.
It's okay. Bucky doesn't care. He'll just use the rest of the land to build a Buc-ee's, and he's expanding to California.
I love tax breaks. Okay. Danny Boy 2003 says, talking of NASCAR officiating, I hope NASCAR doesn't throw the yellow at shorter ovals and force them to change to rain tires when it starts raining. Oh, they're definitely going to do that. Danny Boy's talking about the fact that NASCAR likes to throw caution. Like they don't like letting wet strategy play out. I mean, Dave Despain had the minute they started talking about rain tires, like Dave Despain had an opinion on it that was like, yeah, they should let them change tires, and they've never just let them change tires. I mean, yeah. I don't know what NASCAR's logic is with that, but
didn't they? I might be wrong on this. I might be wrong on this, but didn't they have it was walking stone last year when it rained? Did they not throw a yellow when it became dry for them to put dries on? Or did they let that play out?
Only works if it's a wet start. Yeah, if it's a wet start, it only works when they have to put rain tires on. I don't think it's the same when they start in the wet and it goes to dry. It's dumb, but that's how it is. They let them choose. So if you want a wet NASCAR race to play out the way you want it to, and especially if it's on an oval, you want it to be raining at the start. You want it to dry up because then you'll get the strategy that we all are looking for. I believe that's how. I could be wrong, but I believe I remember that's how it works.
So I watched that Watkins Glen race at your place. That was probably after our bonsai gateway trip.
Yeah, that would have been.
Because I remember it was raining, and I don't remember them throwing a caution or not. But that is the thing they do that is stupid.
Yeah,
it'll really rain and they'll throw a yellow and then they'll.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, that made me mad.
Yeah,
I was upsetty spaghetti about that. And the last super chat, unless I'm missing one, is Napa Racing Fan once again saying, "What track do you want back on the IndyCar schedule the most?" Kyle, I'll let you start.
Cleveland.
Well, I agree with you, but I know that your reasons are not as.
I can sleep in my own bed and go to an IndyCar race.
Boo. Well, I don't disagree.
Too.
No, it's a great track. I mean, and this is what really upsets me about the fact that Cleveland's gone is like I'm going to say something really controversial here. Like the kart road racing product, like the Champ cars, wasn't as good as we think it was. Like it was usually like blowout win. Like Twitter would hate kart racing because it was not social media TikTok friendly. It was very much a very legitimate quote unquote competition. Like if Alex Zanardi lapped the field twice, nobody cared. But Cleveland made the Champ cars race like they do on road courses now, where it's like 2 or 3 wide, dive bombs all over the place. I think it's so unfortunate that the DW12 era, which has been known, one of the things that people actually are going to finally remember this era, whenever the hell it ends, will be the road racing product that it has produced. And the fact that we haven't taken these cars that road race so well to Cleveland is a tragedy because we'd probably see the craziest freaking road course race of all time. It would be an all-timer, I think, if they went back to Cleveland.
In fact, we don't take them to more tracks that are based off of runways. They have one. That sucks.
Well, they tried, like they did one in Edmonton, but like they made it so narrow that it was like, it's like, why did you go to an airport if you're just going to block off half the runways?
Yeah.
Like that was like they tried to do Cleveland, but didn't understand Cleveland with Edmonton. And I know I pissed people off because a lot of people liked Edmonton, but like for me, Edmonton was like the biggest like tease ever. It's like, we're going to another airport course. And I was like, yes. And then I watched the race. I'm like, that sucked. And that's that's one of the first David Land rants ever on YouTube is the Elio Castroneves quote unquote blocking penalty. So if you want to watch me mad about IndyCars 15 years ago, check that out on YouTube. My IndyCar track that I want them to go back to the most would be, it's a toss-up, especially since you said Cleveland already.
Yeah, I knew I took yours.
No. Well, it wasn't mine. Cleveland's probably number 2 for me, simply because of realistic thoughts. I think Milwaukee is very close, but the problem is Milwaukee, I think, is the most realistic. So I need to go unrealistic, which is 500 miles at Michigan. Like, just got to, the fact, and this is the thing that really upsets me about people who talk crap about Michigan. Oh, you can't go back to Michigan. Michigan, if you look, first of all, look at the 2007 crowd and tell me that you wouldn't kill for a crowd that big in Indy cars now. And second of all, Michigan is one of the only tracks that's still active that has not hosted a post-merger race, that hosted a pre-merger race or a split race. It's unbelievable to me that of all the tracks, Michigan just has not gotten a chance to show a post-merger IndyCar race. And I think the cars as they're set up now, I think would race so good at Michigan. They're so low downforce and so low drag that I think a lot of the problems that we see at other ovals would kind of be fixed at Michigan because of the banking. We've still not seen an IR18 race on a 2-mile track. The last time they raced on a 2-mile track, it was the AeroKit race in 15, which I think most people would say was very exciting. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it. Michigan.
Yeah. If I had to think of tracks for IndyCar, like just tracks in general, not just one, Michigan, Phoenix, Homestead,
Phoenix,
Watkins Glen.
Phoenix wouldn't be a good race though. And unfortunately, I mean, we've seen Phoenix.
It wasn't as bad as people. I still am of the opinion that in 2018, the 16 and 17 races, I was at the 16 one. It was bad. 17 was bad. 18, I feel like wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. I will stand up for 2018. And then we didn't go back for another IR18 event.
Yeah.
So once the new AeroKit came in, it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it wasn't horrible. The problem is it's just not old Phoenix. Like that to me, like the old Phoenix was so perfect for Indy cars. and the new Phoenix just is not.
Yeah. Well, plus it's just a struggle to get a crowd there.
Yeah. It's a struggle on the West Coast period. I love Laguna Seca, but there just were not that many people there, like relatively speaking. I mean, the areas that you wanted to be packed were packed, but like, now having been to 15 races, when you go to Long Beach, it kind of puts all the other events into perspective. You know what I mean? You kind of know, okay, this is what a big crowd feels like at an IndyCar race.
Yeah. Well, Road America too. Road America is pretty packed.
Yeah,
that's another one.
That's a big track too, which is positive.
When you make that track look full, you're doing something right.
It's gonna look more full now because you don't have to compete with the NASCAR race.
Yeah.
Well, that was our Daytona 500 review, David Lamb podcast. We actually went a little bit over than we usually do, so have fun editing this one, Kyle.
Don't even worry about it. It's so easy.
Oh, well, don't say that. It's hard. You're supposed to say it's hard.
It's such a strenuous job I do editing this podcast. All the time spent doing it. It's just tough.
Gee willikers. Aw, shucks. I guess the next episode is going to be the St. Pete preview, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we that close?
Yeah.
We're that close. The offseason is almost over for IndyCar.
I'm going to make it to St. Pete, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to the podcast next week. I'm going to be on a cruise with my girlfriend.
Oh, that's right.
So David's going to have to find a guest or sit here.
Find a guest. Oh, my God. What am I going to do? Well, we'll figure it out. See, I already know who I'm going to ask. It's going to make you mad if they say yes. At least we'll try. It might be our first guest episode. I might just invite 3 or 4 guys on and see what happens. All right. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching, and we will hear you or see you in the next podcast.